Today I want to talk about something that is kind of a hard subject to talk about, and if you have read my blog for a long time, you already know this story, and you already know how important this subject is to me. And I'm looking outside and it snowed today. It snowed for a while, but we're getting close to spring, and once spring is here, it won't be long until it's summer in Michigan and all around the US. And when that happens, the stories will start coming out about kids with autism that have eloped. And eloping is what we call it in the autism community, when a child with autism wanders away, gets out of their house, gets away from whoever they're with, and basically runs off, gets away. And a lot of times our kids don't really have the necessary fear or like knowledge of danger, realization of danger. Like Maggie doesn't realize that she isn't a mermaid that can't swim. So, I mean, that's really, really dangerous. And not all kids, I don't want to paint people with autism with a broad brush, because every person is different, every person's unique. You know one person with autism, you know one person with autism, but a lot of little kids with autism seem to love water. And a lot of little kids with autism, a lot of little kids in general, but a lot of little kids with autism may be older than other little neurotypical kids, don't necessarily have the same perceptions of danger. At least that was how Maggie was, and it has gotten better. But I mean, not enough that I would let my guard down for a second. And it's really made the last 4 or 5 years of our lives about kind of constant vigilance. And it's funny because I have this picture of her at Paul's graduation from graduate school, and she was not yet 1. She would have been 1 on July 4th of that year, and he graduated, I think, April, maybe either the end of April or in May. And this was probably one of the first times that like something seemed odd to me, but not so odd that I just thought she was this brave, daring little girl. We were sitting outside of the chapel where he graduated, and she started crawling away from me. Not walking yet. She's like bundled up in a little jacket, and we're like in this huge quad, and it's this huge grassy field, and she just starts crawling and crawling and crawling and crawling and crawling, and she gets like 50 yards away from me, and I was sitting there on a blanket. There were no people around, and I was just kind of seeing how far she would get. I mean, I could easily get up and get to her before anything else could get to her. I knew she was safe. But I was watching her, and then I finally got up because I didn't want her to get any farther away from me, and started it. But I actually wasn't like 50 yards. It was probably more like 50 feet. And started following her, and she did like this huge circle, and she didn't look at me one time to see where I was. Like James, he's like with me all the time. Even as a 3-year-old, he's like glued to my side. Where's Mom? I mean, the fact that I've snuck up here is only because Sadie's home and he's playing with Sadie, and he's glued to Sadie and arguing with Sadie about like Legos downstairs. And so that was should have been one of the first things that I noticed, if I had known to notice. Like, and it was something that like with Tessie that I started telling her therapist about. Once she started to become mobile, it was like she doesn't have a tether. We're out at a park and she'll just like walk away from me, and she'll just start walking and she won't look back. And I don't think it's quite as extreme with Tessie as it was with Maggie, but she's still really little, so we'll have to see. Anyways, with Maggie, by the time Maggie it was the summer right before her 5th birthday, and Paul was studying for the bar, and the kids and I went back to California to stay with my parents so he could study without us being a distraction, and so that we could have a fun summer visiting with them. And they live in a very rural area in the mountains next to a river, like, I mean, several hundred yards from a river. And we went to stay with them, and at home we would have like 20 locks on every door. And before we went out there, we talked about like security, and they put locks on their doors. They got extra locks for everything, locks everywhere. And I had brought these locks for the inner door that was I think called the door monkey, and we used them at home too. And it's like a hook that hooks around that keeps the door open about this far so little kids can't pinch their fingers, and it goes up high. We got ours on Amazon, and it makes it really easy for adults to open and close doors. And by the time she was 6, she was able to slam through those things, but they were very, very effective when she was small, and we used them a lot. And we had one of those on the kitchen door leading into the back pantry that went into the garage. And on this particular day, she was playing in the sink in the kitchen, and kind of playing in the kitchen, and the kitchen opened up into the living room, so there was no door closed or anything, and she was playing in there. And James was like 9 months old, and I went into the living room where he was, and Patrick was in there, and I was sitting on the floor with the 2 boys, and I noticed that it had been quiet for about 5 minutes. And I thought she was playing in the sink on the other side of a wall without a door. I'd been listening to her play, and all of a sudden I realized that it had been quiet 5 minutes. And she's never quiet. She's always making some sound. And my heart just stopped. And I was barefoot. And after that, it was a long time before I would be barefoot again. A really long time. And I ran into the kitchen, and I saw that whoever had gone out the back kitchen door, that the door monkey hadn't caught quite all the way on the latch, and that it was open. And I think I screamed, and I pushed that door open and ran out, and I saw that the door into the garage was open. And my mom had heard me yell, and I ran outside, and the garage door had been opened. And so I ran out that. So she'd gone out 3 doors. And I ran outside, and I think it was 105 degrees that day, and I was barefoot. And I ran straight to the river. I ran down their driveway, and then I turned on this dirt road, and I ran to the river. And when I got to the floodplain, which was like this fine gravel, which I'm mentioning because that was about the time that it became excruciatingly painful, because it was over 100 degrees. It really, really started to hurt my feet. And I ran across the floodplain, and I couldn't see her anywhere. And at that point, I was completely sure that we'd lost her forever. And I made myself run across it, and I could barely stand up because it hurt so much. And I got there, and she was nowhere. And by then my mom came running down, and she stood at the river, like basically guarding that side of the riverbank, because the river pretty much is solid trees on either side except for this open plain. So she was basically guarding the river in case Maggie hadn't already gotten to it. Sorry, I need to remind myself it was okay. Obviously, it's okay. And she gave me her shoes, and was in the shade down there. And I put on her shoes and ran up to the house, and I ran up this canyon that was behind their house. And I ran up and I started screaming there, because they live in a rural area where their neighbors they have neighbors, but the neighbors are a good distance apart. And 2 of the neighbors heard me screaming and came outside and started looking. And my dad had inside. My mom had gotten a hold of my dad, and he called 911. Had called 911 right away. And they had dogs coming, and highway patrol coming, and sheriff's officers coming, and a helicopter coming. They responded so fast. This is a county that has like 14,000 people, and it was amazing, the response that they had mobilized immediately. And I turned around and was headed back to the river because I was sure, I mean, Maggie thinks that she is a mermaid. Where else would she go? Thank goodness. Where she had gone was she had decided that she was going home to Michigan and to her dad, I guess. And she had started walking barefoot. She had tights on. Apparently the tights protected her way better than they protected me. Then bare feet protected me. She was wearing tights and this little pink dress. She had started walking, and she'd walked down the driveway, and she'd walked up this driveway. She made it 0.6 miles, and she turned down the main road and started walking down the blacktop where a car had stopped and slowed down and started following her. And when the call came in to 911, they put it out, and the Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, heard it, and there was a truck coming back from like a drill, and they looked down at where they heard where the road, and they were like, we're right near that road. And so they turned onto the road, and they came around a corner, and she was skipping down the middle of the road, and they grabbed her. And they didn't hear on the call, they missed the part of the call that said that she was a child with autism, or maybe it didn't come down, it just maybe said missing child, whatever it was. They didn't know she had autism, so she got like in the bottom of their truck and was hiding. And my dad came up in their car, and there was highway patrol and Forest Service trucks there, and they turned her over to him, and he brought her home, and then the sheriff came to make sure we were okay. And it was 15 minutes from the time that she would have gone missing. She was missing for about 15 minutes altogether. And I think we knew she was missing for like 10 of those minutes. And we're really, really lucky that she survived. I mean, we're really, really lucky to have her. And that's with, after that we got more locks. We got more locks. We got alarms for all of their doors. And at this point, like in our house, we have bought every single lock on one side of the aisle at Home Depot. And she's broken chain locks, she's broken just about every lock, and now we have double cylinder locks, and that makes me feel safe. And it's just she's totally fearless, and I mean, she has a ton of freedom in our house. We give her absolutely as much freedom as we can. We have a huge backyard, but she's just so fearless, and it has gotten better, but just the total lack of fear is really scary. And every single summer I see they'll start to roll in on the news. You'll start to see like a child with autism's missing, and there will be a huge search mobilized, not unlike what was mobilized with us. And usually the news isn't like the news. Usually it's not good news. I mean, maybe it's because by the time it makes the news like that, the kid's already been missing for a while, and you're less likely to have good news after a while. But, and I'm always, it's masochistic, I'm always watching those stories and like praying so hard, because I know that could have been me, that was almost us, that was almost our family. And I remember those 10 minutes, that feeling. And usually there's like 1,000 comments about the parents and how horrible they are, and how people like that don't deserve children, and on and on. And it's like, you let your guard down for a second, or you're changing a baby's diaper in the other room or nursing the baby, and you're literally listening to your child play in the sink in a room that's totally closed, and you think that the door is locked, and then they're gone because they're like a master lock picker, which Maggie basically is. Maggie has literally picked locks. She's picked locks. I mean, she's broken chain locks because she's really good at leverage. She understands how leverage works. This morning, the bus driver said to me, "Is that key in her the backpack hers?" And I said, key? And she's like, yeah, that's hers, right? It's like, Maggie doesn't have keys. She had stolen keys from someone at school, and I'm certain that she stole those keys so that she could try them in our locks to see. Like, it is like, I mean, it's got to be a certain sort of genius, because she is also fantastic at puzzles. She's really good at puzzles, but she is fantastic at breaking locks and getting through locks. She has a future in security systems, if ever. I don't know. And yeah, it's hard to talk about, but I think it's important too. And after that, I went on like a search for GPSs. Like, we were gonna have the best GPS, and I tried out, first I ordered from one company that makes GPSs for children with disabilities, and that GPS was just so bulky, there was no way, and it didn't have service where my parents lived, which was important for us. And so I sent that one back, and we ended up going with the Verizon Gizmo Gadget. And at the time it was the Verizon Gizmo Pal, and then now that she's bigger, she has the Verizon Gizmo Gadget. And let me say, it's not perfect. It's like a phone. She can call. In the beginning it was 4 people on it, but I think it's more now. And it has some little games on it, not a ton of games. It has buttons she can push. The first ones weren't waterproof. These ones are waterproof, but they're only waterproof if you don't press the buttons underwater. And if you're a mermaid, you press buttons underwater, which is probably why we go through a new one every 12 months. But with Maggie, if something lasts for 12 months, I count that as a win, more or less. So I can't really complain. And so she's on her, I don't know, third or fourth. Yeah, she's 7. This happened when she was about to turn 5. She's on her 3rd, I think. A little bit less than 1 a year. I would recommend it if you have a child with autism and they tolerate wearing a watch. They like keeping a watch on. Like, she liked keeping it on. She would only take it off when she goes into water most of the time, and that's because we got her into the habit of it, because she liked to press the buttons underwater, and I was trying to save it. And that is the only thing really that I insisted on being put in her IEP, additional to what the teacher suggested. I insisted they put her GPS in her IEP, that they weren't allowed to take it off other than for swim lessons, because she has swim lessons at her school. So our strategies for keeping her safe have been the GPS has been the biggest one. Obviously in therapy she has worked on not eloping for years, and we've had varying measures of success with that. Last year it seemed like it was going really, really well, and then last summer it kind of all of a sudden seemed like all the work had unraveled right around the time when it seemed like she was having seizures and just gone, it seemed like. And I don't know how much we've come back from that. It doesn't seem like we've totally come back from where we were right before last summer. Like, this time last year I feel like I felt safer about her not running away from us than I do right now. There are these bands, and I'll put the links for some of these things down below. And I mean, this is not sponsored or anything, I just love the company. I think they're called, Alert Me bands? I think they're called Alert Me bands. And Maggie's had several of them, and they lasted a really long time. I mean, they lasted until they were like so faded from being out in the sun and stuff that we got another one. And we could have her name, mom's phone number, or not, no, it wasn't her name. It was like, it was a design that we chose, mom's phone number, dad's phone number. I have autism. You could have like, I am nonverbal. You could have allergies. You could really have like just absolutely whatever you want printed on that. And she was wearing one of those for a long time. She doesn't wear that anymore. Praying, being lucky, swim lessons at school. We've done a lot of swim lessons on our own too, like sensory swim lessons, special ed swim lessons, with very little progress. I'm really hoping, I mean, I taught swim lessons for 8 years, and Maggie doesn't know how to swim. we've had not really any luck teaching her how to swim at this point. I'm hoping, I really, really want her to learn how to swim well. And that, when she learns how to swim well, I'll feel a little bit safer. Because that is one of my biggest fears. Because whenever you hear this, whenever you read the stories, a lot of the times they involve water. And I mean, heck, when we were looking for houses, when we moved out of the city, when we were looking for houses, the number one thing that I said was, we told the realtor, was like, no water. It can't have water near it. It can't be near ponds. It can't be near lakes. It can't be near rivers. And that really made it hard to find a house in Michigan. There's a lot of little ponds. There's a lot of little lakes, creeks, rivers. It made house shopping tough. But we go on being constantly vigilant. And I mean, with the measures we put in place, I do feel safer. I feel like we have a handle on it now. But it still scares me. I mean, obviously it still scares me. You can probably tell that from this video. It scares me so much. It's like, it is the scariest part of being a parent. Like, this is probably the only part of being an autism parent that, like, is really, really hard for me. Her running away is the only part of being an autism parent that I would, like, just, that's hard for me, that I feel like I can't handle. This is the part that is hard for me to handle because I'm scared for her. She's a genius when it comes to this sort of thing. It's amazing the things that she has gotten past. There's still one that I can't figure out. There was a lock on this little toy closet that we have that has like extra toys because there's too many toys out, and I have a closet where I can put toys away and change them out, and it has like a deadbolt, like, you know, one of those locks that's like fits together, clicks together, locks with a key, and she had it open the other day. Like, that's a new one. That's a new level of Maggie getting through a lock that was locked. How she did it. Usually I can figure it out, but yeah, that time she didn't have the key. Only I and Paul had the keys. We still had our keys. I have no idea how she did it. If she actually like is to the level where she can now pick key locks, or but nothing would surprise me. It's Maggie. She's a genius. She's so smart. But that is, I should be saving these, maybe, no, April's away. I should be saving these for April and Autism Awareness Month. My scary story. My scary story of my awesome kid. I think like all parents, it's just, we really want to keep her safe. And when you have a kid that elopes, it's a little bit, it's more than a little bit. Understatement of the year, it's more of a challenge. And so that is my scariest parenting story. And I hope that I never ever beat it. If I do, I'll probably, I don't know, have a nervous breakdown. And that's all the time that I have for today.